comment section. And what a great forum this is for you to ask questions and to get answers as well. So let me just tell you, my guest today is Miss Michelle Dwyer, and we're going to be talking about nutrition. Guys, I don't know about you, but I can't get enough information around nutrition. I mean, some days just kind of balancing what I should and shouldn't eat. So, we're going to be talking to Miss Michelle. But let me just start with this, that many Americans, especially older Americans, they aren't getting all the nutrition they need. Good nutrition, y'all, it's the cornerstone of healthy aging. And if y'all know what I mean, we're that age. You may say I'm an OG, but listen, this is really important. We usually don't need as many calories, but we have to be sure that we get enough of certain key nutrients like calcium, vitamin B12, vitamin D. And even many people who are overweight, they fall short on vitamins, minerals, and other nutrients. They get plenty of calories, that's stuff that you really like to eat, but they're not getting enough nutrition. So unfortunately, the thing that happens is a long-term lack of nutrients may cause other symptoms and things to show up. So getting proper nutrition often becomes harder with age because of things like loss of appetite, problems with chewing or swallowing. But this is why it's so important to talk to your doctor about nutrition. Now, let me tell you a little bit about my guest, Miss Michelle Dwyer. Look, y'all, if you don't get anything out of today's show, then I have to just tell you, then you really didn't get the memo. And I'm actually going to start because I want Michelle to tell us a little bit about her background and a little bit about her backstory. By the way, for those of you, I already see there's comments. Hey, if you guys will tell us where you are chiming in from, I would greatly appreciate that. But let me bring Michelle in. Michelle, look, nutrition consultant, a health coach. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I'm excited to have you. And I've been waiting on this. We've been trading emails and looking forward to talking about nutrition. And I know you can go, right? You can talk a lot about nutrition. So let's first of all just start with a little bit about your background. Tell the viewers about you and your background, and then we're going to move into your backstory, why or how you got interested in health and nutrition. Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited. I loved your setup, and I can't wait to dive into all those pieces more. So, my name is Michelle Dwyer. I'm a holistic health coach and certified nutrition consultant. So what does that mean? It means that I support people in their health and well-being. When we talk about holistic, think of the word whole, right? We are whole bodies. We are whole humans. And so it is so important what we're eating, how we're moving our body, how we're taking care of ourselves in terms of resting and our sleep. There's so many different factors, and our needs change as we are of different ages. So what we need when we're teenagers might be different than what we need when we're in our 20s or 30s and beyond. So I get to really help folks personalize what they need for their bodies, personalize their nutrition. And I get to have the wonderful job of talking about food all day long, right? Because I love food. I love talking about food, and I like making it more fun, maybe making sure we bring in like the joy and the pleasure of food, but also, like you said, everybody's eating, right? So what do we eat? How do we make these choices, and how do we make those choices easier for folks? So that's a little bit about what I do. I have a Master's of Science degree in health and nutrition education. So I'll share that a little bit more with my story, because I went back and got that master's degree. This is a second career for me. And for me, it's really important to have that board certification. So I am board certified in holistic nutrition. So that's a little bit in terms of, I don't know. I like the credentials. I think it's important. And
Yeah.
this for about 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, even just talking with you, I was like, wow, I love the energy. I love the fact, there's nothing better than talking to someone who has a passion for what it is that they do. And you definitely have got the fire, as they say, you got the fire. So let me just first kind of a comment, but also, a question. There's so much confusion these days around what it means to eat healthy, right? You hear that. Don't go to sometimes physicians and they say, well, you've just got to change your diet. You got to eat healthier. What does that mean? So, what does healthy eating mean to you, Michelle?
Yeah, no, it is. It's so confusing. And to be honest, part of my own journey was feeling really confused about that myself before I went back to school. You can go to Dr. Google and you can start Googling things and pick a food and it'll tell you it's the worst thing ever or it's the best thing ever, right? Never eat this. Make sure you're eating all this. And so it can be very overwhelming and very confusing. So I like to simplify things, right? What we want to focus on are foods that nourish our body. And what does that mean? Well, we're getting those nutrient dense foods, those foods that you were talking about that give us those vitamins and those minerals, that good source of fiber, making sure we have enough fat and healthy proteins, right? So what does that look like? It's going to vary for person to person. So that's where it gets confusing too. The fancy name for that is biochemical individuality, right? So we all know that two people could eat the same exact thing and it's going to do one thing for this person and another thing for this person. So I always encourage folks, part of the journey is listening to your own body, right? Understanding what works well for you. But in terms of general parameters, right, we want to eat real food, whole foods, focus on plant foods. For those of you who know, I love Michael Pollan. He tried to simplify it for us, and I think it's really, really helpful down to those 7 words. Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. And then what does that look like for each person? Well, there might be some variety and some changes, but if we're eating real food, right? Food that doesn't necessarily that we can grow, that we can like harvest, right? That we're eating lots of plant-based foods, right? So we don't have to be vegetarian or vegan to be eating lots and lots of plants. And then the not too much, right? So making sure we get what our body needs, but not eating more than our body needs. So, but I appreciate the confusion because there's a lot of, confusing information out there. We'll put it that way.
Right. Absolutely. So, when we talk about your role as a nutritionist, what are some things that a nutritionist can assist you with?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love that I get to do this work. It really, it's important to me to do meaningful work in this world. And I'm very, very, very lucky that I get to do this. So for the folks that I work, it can vary from a lot of different things. I work with folks who have digestive issues. So they're trying to figure out how to support their digestion, what to eat to make sure that their body feels good. I work with a lot of folks who are working with blood sugar regulation. So making sure that blood sugar stays stable, whether they've gotten a diagnosis of prediabetes or diabetes, or they're just recognizing like, hey, like I am really like eating a lot of sugar and I don't want to eat so much. A lot of folks come in to see me about healthy weight loss. So they want to make sure that they're doing it in a way that works with their body. They don't want to do a diet. Diets don't work. We have the science to back that up, right? A diet will work short term, but what's the sustainable long-term eating plan is the word I like to use. That's actually going to allow us to be at a balanced weight. I also work with a lot of plant-based clients. So clients who do want to become more plant-based, and it might be someone who's vegan or vegetarian. They want to make sure that they're getting all their nutrients. And then I also work with a population of progressive leaders and change makers to making sure their health and nutrition is feeling strong and balanced so that they can go out there and do the good work that they're here to do. So I work with kind of a variety of pieces, but really a lot of it's really practical, right? Like, what do I eat for breakfast? How do I make sure listen, the worst time to figure out what you're having for dinner is at dinner time, and you open the refrigerator and you're like, what should we have?
And you're starving.
Starving, right? And it's like at the end of the day, right?
Yes,
like our brain does not make great decisions at the end of the day, Gloria. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'll speak for myself. My brain does not make great decisions at the end.
Oh my goodness, are you kidding? Do not let there be a chocolate candy bar in the refrigerator, right? Because I'm hungry and I know that it's going to be 30 minutes to an hour before I can get dinner cooked. And it's just like, and that's why I wanted to have you talk about, all right, how do we, not blow it? Yeah. Because I love the fact that you say diets, because you know what, they need to throw that word out the window, because what works for one person certainly doesn't work for another person. Yeah. But how do we deal with that? So that leads me into this question, Michelle. Discuss what's considered good foods.
Mhm. Yeah. So I'm going to even challenge you a little bit there, Gloria, because I like to
Okay.
I like to move away from good and bad foods.
All right.
Right? Because your chocolate bar is a perfect example, right? If we call that chocolate bar a bad food and then we eat it, then guess what? We're telling ourselves that we're bad. And we're not bad for eating a chocolate bar. Chocolate is meant to be like enjoyed and a very pleasurable part of life. Now, is it a nourishing choice to eat that instead of your dinner? Maybe not, right? So I like to use the word nourishing and depleting, right? So nourishing foods fill us up, right? They give us the vitamins, the minerals, the nutrients, the proteins, the healthy fats. We feel good when we have them, right? So that is a place where we can use the word good. We feel good. Our energy is good. Our sleep is good. Depleting foods, it doesn't mean we can't ever have them, right? It's just recognizing that we want to have a balance. And so when I was in nutrition school, and I think this is a really good approach for most of us, is the 80-20 approach, right? If 80% of what we're eating is a nourishing food, right, and nourishing for our bodies, then we can handle the 20%, right? Whether it's the chocolate bar, the glass of wine, the cup of coffee, the, special dessert on Valentine's Day, whatever it is, right? That we make room and we have a space for those things that we do enjoy, that we don't want to necessarily eat every day all the time, right? But if French fries are your jam and you want to make sure that there's a space for French fries, then have those and enjoy them. But so even moving away from good and bad, right?
Okay.
So I like to talk about nourishing and depleting, but that's also where it gets tricky, right? Because for one person, coffee is a great example, right? For some people, coffee is fine. Coffee is a totally nourishing thing in the right amount, as long as they don't have too much. And for others of us, it's depleting. So again, it comes back to listening to that body wisdom, right? Like what makes our body feel strong, energized, balanced, feel in our digestion. So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And it's like you said, that balance. And it's true. I know that I'll eat that candy bar and
I told you that candy bar is bad and I can't ever have it. That diet mentality, right?
Right.
How about you? But the moment I tell myself I can't have something, there's that part of that brain that's like, oh yeah, I can't have that, right? So we want to also make room and space in our eating plan for the things that we enjoy, but recognize that they are treats, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sugar, I will say, Gloria, this is where I get very, very passionate because folks are eating way more sugar than they even realize. And I was the same way before I started to kind of pay attention. And I thought I was eating healthy, right? And so we can eat things that seem healthy, but actually have a lot of sneaky sugars. So like yogurt is a perfect example, right? Those flavored yogurts, everyone's like, eat your yogurt, take your probiotics, right? Like it's a healthy snack.
Right.
Some of those cartons of yogurt and you could be eating as much sugar as is in your chocolate bar, right? And so I like to focus on the education, to be more aware. And a little tip for everybody out there, because I think this really helps me when I'm making decisions, is 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon. Okay, so 4 grams of sugar is a teaspoon, and a teaspoon is a sugar cube. So remember those little sugar cubes that right? And it's a lot easier to visualize a sugar cube than what 4 grams of sugar is. Because if you pick up that, I don't know, that yogurt, that granola bar, whatever it is, and it says 20 grams of sugar, I don't know, is that a lot? Is that a little? Is that good? Is that bad? That doesn't mean anything to most of us. But if I say, hey, Gloria, when you're eating that granola bar, you're eating 5 teaspoons of sugar, and I show you 5 sugar cubes, right? You might have thinking you were making a healthy choice, but if I handed you 5 sugar cubes, I think you would know.
Right.
Oh, that's actually not what I was trying. That wasn't the choice I was trying to make there. So I always encourage folks, if you are eating something with a label, check that label, check those sugars, do the math, 4 grams, 4 sugar cube, and then just think, is that actually what I want in this moment, right? Is that the choice that I want to make, right? Because if we're having a piece of cake, it might be like, yeah, that's the choice. Sure, hand me 4 sugar cubes, right? If 5 sugar cubes. But if we're like, oh, I thought I was making a healthy choice when I picked this thing, but I didn't realize there was that much sugar in it. So
Right.
yeah.
What a great analogy, because I clearly remember, before you scoop sugar, we had sugar cubes. So that's a really, really great analogy.
You
That,
visualize it
thank
when
you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. So look, Michelle, when we come back, let's talk about plant-based eating. You hear a lot of that out there today, and I would love to have you weigh in on that. So don't go anywhere, you guys. We'll be right back. All right.
Myth. If you get COVID-19, you'll recover after a few days. That myth is false. We're only just beginning to understand the effects of COVID-19 on the human body, as we're starting to see more and more people identifying as long haulers who are having symptoms for weeks, if not months, after their initial infection. Continue to wear a mask, socially distance, and wash your hands. Together, we can keep COVID out of school.
For ways to keep your community safe, go to backtoschooltogether.com.
All right. Hey, if you guys are just tuning in, we've got another dope show for you. I am talking with Miss Michelle Dwyer, who is a nutritionist. She's a health consultant. And before we went to break, I asked her when we come back if she would talk about this thing called plant-based eating. And I know a lot of you have questions around that. And so, Michelle, let's talk about, plant-based eating. Tell us more about what that is.
Sure. Yeah. It's so listen, I have to just start by saying I love plants. I think plants are amazing, right? And this is when you're talking about like how do we eat more healthy? We eat healthier by eating more plants. And so again, you can kind of personalize and that makes sense for you. So you don't have to become vegan, you don't have to become vegetarian to be eating more plants, right? So plant forward, plant focused, plant based, right? So that's kind of like a larger umbrella where we're focusing on eating, you might have heard of eating the rainbow, right? We're not talking about Skittles, we're talking about eating a rainbow of fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, getting those colors in because those colors really that they're beautiful, but they're also where we're getting our vitamins and our minerals and our nutrients and our fibers. So this is where when you're eating more like on a plate, right, you want at least half your plate to be vegetables or vegetables and fruit, right? So that you are still eating, your starchy carby things, and you are still eating your protein and your healthy fats. But starting with that goal of making at least half your plate vegetables is a great place to start. Now, some folks want to take it to the point where they're vegetarian. So vegetarian means that they're not eating any usually like animal flesh, right? Like they're not eating the cow or the pig or the chicken, but they might still eat dairy or eggs, right? And so that's usually called like lacto-avo vegetarian. And then folks who are vegan are saying, I'm not going to eat any animal products whatsoever. And so they're getting their protein from things like beans, lentils, legumes, tofu, those sort of proteins, nuts and seeds, but they're not eating any animal products. And a lot of folks are somewhere kind of in between, right? And in terms of the health benefits, if you're a moderately healthy person, right, focus on, and I always like to add rather than take away. So add more plants. In particular, I'm a big fan of, I feel like I'm everybody's mom. Eat your vegetables, right? Like there's,
Right.
there's so many options too. And I also want to say, like, if you don't like kale, don't eat kale, right? Like there are so many beautiful vegetables out there.
Right.
Try new things, eat different colors, eat the things that you like to eat. But that's kind of the umbrella of plant-based, I think, is a really great one. If you're not wanting to say I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan, it's like I'm focusing on eating more plants.
Right, right. And to our viewers, one of the things, like you said, there is this rainbow. I love the way you say not Skittles, because you said rainbow. I'm thinking, oh, Skittles sound good right now. But exactly. And a lot of times people aren't willing to try, or maybe a little bit timid about trying something new. So if you don't know how to eat spaghetti squash, right? Or artichoke. There are so many things out there now that will tell you exactly how to cook
Yep.
those particular things. And so I want to encourage people to try all of these different vegetables. I remember the first time I tried golden beets, right?
Mhm.
Because the beets I'd always known were purple beets, but the golden beets, oh my gosh, I mean, with a little olive oil, a little salt and pepper, baked it, in foil in the oven, and they were great. And so it's those things, and those are kind of the things that you'll also find at probably more health food markets, because they carry a lot of different varieties of things as well. So thank you for talking about that. But here's the question: talk about vegetarian, talk about vegan. How sustainable are they? Because here's why I ask this: I know people who've said, I'm vegan, right? But they're eating a ton of cheese, a ton of bread,
Sure.
right? And then they wonder why, their girth is so large. So talk a little bit about
Yeah.
how sustainable really and truly are these.
That's a great point. And it's a great, taking a step back, right? If we're talking about becoming vegan for ethical reasons, right, we might make certain choices. But if we're talking about being more plant-based from a nutritional perspective, then there might be a separate set of choices, right? And so I've worked with clients who are self-described, I did not call them this, self-described junk food vegans, right? Because especially nowadays, with so much trend around vegan foods, you could eat vegan all day long and never touch a vegetable, right? You could eat packaged foods all day long. And so when we're talking about being plant-based or being more vegetarian or vegan, again, we're talking about whole foods, real foods, plant foods, right? And if there's those little bit of treats that you're like, okay, I want the vegan cupcake or whatever it is, have the vegan cupcake. But again, like the 80% of the food, my encouragement is that it's real food, that it's whole food, that it's a lot of vegetables and fruits. So I think you're absolutely right. And I know from myself, I've been some version of plant-based. It's changed a lot. I'm now 46. I've been some sort of plant-based since I was 18. But it's shifted and it's changed. And I can't eat the giant bowls of pasta that I used to be able to eat. My body does not want that, nor does it like that. So now I switched that out for giant like spaghetti squash and the beets and the broccoli and all those kind of things. So absolutely. In terms of sustainability, it really depends on the body, and it also makes sure if someone is vegan, there are certain nutrients that they do need to make sure they're getting. The B12, like you mentioned, for older folks too, right? So B12, iron, vitamin D, omega-3s, there are certain nutrients to make sure that a vegan is getting, right? Because they may not be coming as easily in the diet. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like there's a way in which one can still be, if they're claiming, it depends again. And whenever I work with someone, the first question I ask is, what is your motivation? Because for one, motivation for being plant-based might be, we might go a certain direction versus for a different direction for someone else. So yeah. And as we get older, I think there is something to be said for, well, I think for everybody, right? But eating more plants can actually feel really, really good. We just need to
Right.
make sure that we're doing it in a healthy way.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I want to just share with you a comment someone made that Michelle's sugar detox program is the most life-changing and amazing thing I've ever done for my health. I recommend her programming for everyone. Michelle, I might have to come see you for sure. Okay. Okay. We do have a question from a viewer. Do you recommend drinking vegetable juice such as, I guess this is Suja, S-U-J-A, which has apple, cherry, cucumber, kale greens as a substitute for eating vegetables? That's a great question.
Such a great question. All right, so let's talk green juices because I think that's a really, really, really great topic. So
Okay.
do green juices substitute for vegetables? No, because you are getting some of the nutrients, but you're not getting all that great fiber. All that fiber is what stays, right? That gets pulled out of the juice. So as a substitute, no, green juices don't replace vegetables, because we also need that fiber. However, some green juices every now and then as a refresher, as a nice cleansing, a toner, absolutely. Here's the thing about juice, though, when it comes to fruit juice, is that the moment we add that apple juice, we add that pineapple juice, or we add, what else do I often see? Like, well, and not in the Suja, but in other ones that are marketed, I'll see like white grape juice, I'll see fruit juice concentrate. The thing about juice, even 100% juice, and I'm talking even orange juice or apple juice, your body doesn't know the difference between that and sugar. So I don't know about you, but on a hot day, I can drink a lot of orange juice and I can drink it really quickly. That's a lot of sugar that comes into the body versus if you've ever squeezed your own orange juice,
Right.
right? You know, it takes a lot of oranges to just make like that much
Right.
juice, right? And so when we take all that fruit juice in, the body has to go, oh, wait, there's a lot of sugar coming in. What do I do with this? Versus if you were to actually eat 5 oranges, right? So blending things into a smoothie, you're still getting the pulp, you're still getting the fiber. That's a great idea. But once we start to juice things, especially those fruit juices, and again, on those labels like Suja, take a look at that sugar label. Take a look at those grams of sugar, because even though it's not added sugar, it's still sugar, and your body doesn't necessarily know the difference, right?
Right. I think people have to really be careful. It seems like lately I've been running to a lot more people who are having an issue with gout, right? And they're drinking these juices and not realizing that it seems like it's causing them to have increased pain. And they say, oh, I've been told to drink this. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness. So that's something that people have to be aware of. But, something else that people are concerned about, and that's about supporting their immune system, Michelle. What are some things or some ways that they can support their immune system through nutrition?
Yeah, no, it's been quite a year, right? Yeah, I think this is too where we really can talk about it holistically. We need good sleep. We need to be drinking our water. We need to be moving our body, right? All of those things support our immune system. So it absolutely is what we're eating, but it is also these other pieces of self-care that are extremely important. We also want to keep inflammation down. We don't want to tax our immune system. And so too much sugar, too much wine or alcohol, too much fried food, too many processed foods, that can start to kind of wear on our immune system too. So again, it doesn't mean we can't have those things. We just want to be careful so that we're allowing our immune system to be as strong and robust as possible. Vitamin C foods, so again, those colorful, especially like oranges and reds. Broccoli also is a great source of vitamin C. So we hear a lot about vitamin C supporting the immune system. Absolutely. And again, those fruits and vegetables. Sweet potato, broccoli. It doesn't have to be a citrus fruit to get that great vitamin C, although lemon is a great one too. So vitamin D, getting your vitamin D levels checked. So if you are getting some blood work done, find out what your vitamin D levels are. It's hard to get vitamin D from food. Generally, we have to supplement. You want to check with your doctor about how to do that. And then the other one is zinc food. So we think about zinc and immune system. So oysters, weirdly, are a great source of zinc. So if you love your oysters, go for your oysters. Pumpkin seeds, a lot of meats and things like that are good sources of zinc. But I think it's supporting our nutrition, right? It's supporting our immune system, but it's also being mindful of the things that, again, like might deplete it so that we're feeling as strong as possible.
Right. Absolutely. Well, look, before we move into, I want to talk about fiber and the importance and the sources of fiber, right? Which is something that I think a lot of times people may not think about, the role that fiber plays in it. But before we do that, I'm just going to say, guys, don't go anywhere. We're just going to take a really quick break. We'll be right back. Michelle, you're awesome. I'm loving this, but we got a whole lot of other questions to get to. So we'll be right back, you guys.
Myth. If you get COVID-19, you'll recover after a few days. That myth is false. We're only just beginning to understand the effects of COVID-19 on the human body, as we're starting to see more and more people identifying as long haulers who are having symptoms for weeks, if not months, after their initial infection. Continue to wear a mask, socially distance, and wash your hands. Together, we can keep COVID out of school.
For ways to keep your community safe, go to backtoschooltogether.com.
Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Hey, I want to thank you guys for hanging in here with us. You are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo with me, your host, Gloria Bailey Ray. And my guest today is Miss Michelle Dwyer. And she has been sharing with us so much because our topic is about nutrition. And we all, whether when you look at overall our population, we are heavier than we've ever been. And that's children, young adults, teenagers, older adults, and it's why. And so I wanted to have someone come in and talk about nutrition and the things that we just really need to be aware of. Sometimes it's just a matter of making some tweaks. But before we went to break, I had posed this question to Michelle, is to talk about the importance of fiber in a person's diet. And I really and truly think that there are a lot of people who have these misconceptions about why they need to have fiber. So let's start with, first of all, talking about the importance of fiber in a person's diet, but also what are some of the sources of fiber that people can get?
Sure. Yeah. And Gloria, do you mind if I just take one step back before we get to fiber? Because
Absolutely.
I just wanted to comment because with the commercial, in terms of our country, Black Lives Matter, I think it's really important to also talk about accessibility to healthy food. And I'm a very big believer in the politics of food as well, right? And so I just kind of wanted to name it without, we don't have to delve too deep into it, but when we're talking about food deserts, when we talk about access to like healthy food, shouldn't be expensive, right? And access to healthy food should be something that not only do we understand what to do with that spaghetti squash, but we have access to that spaghetti squash, right?
Right.
And so there's so many great organizations who are doing kind of CSA boxes where you can have food, like a box of produce delivered and support your local farm.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of local, like where you can grow your own food. So I just wanted to bring that up because I do think there's a really important piece of the food puzzle, which is that as a country, right, if we want to be healthier and stronger and really focus on the nutrition, it needs to be on all levels, right?
Yeah.
Well, choices that we're making, but those bigger levels. So
right.
That real quick.
No. And great point. And the thing is, when we talk about food justice, actually food injustices, because Sticky said there are these deserts, there's these pockets, and we find it in low income communities. And it's really, to me, a tragedy that doesn't work. But as you said, there are also, other organizations where you can get fresh fruits and vegetables, even in, I know there are people who are chiming in right now in the South, and they are, hunkered down because of the snow, the ice, those things. But just understanding and knowing that, and then, like you said, the food deserts. What are we talking about here? So I do think that it is important, and kudos and hats off to you for mentioning that and talking about it. And the thing is, until we all make a big deal about it, this is when things will change. But I can't say enough about being able to grow your own food, whether it's in a wash tub or, a pot, whatever it is, getting entrenched. And that's something that I've done. I'm a country girl. So for me, I, growing everything from potatoes and tomatoes and that kind of thing. So thank you, Michelle, for bringing that up.
Fiber, but I felt like it was an important thing to say.
No, absolutely. So now back to the fiber piece. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so it's funny. I have to just always share when I think about fiber, because I do get to talk about fiber a lot. When I was growing up, like, it was like cereal. I don't know, is what we like. You need to eat this cereal because it's high in fiber, and like it was like, oh, you need to eat fiber because it's good for you. But there wasn't really like a great understanding of like, it was just like, eat more fiber. Right. So I love talking about fiber because you get to kind of think about it. So fiber, there's two different, well, there's kind of two main categories, soluble and insoluble fiber. So if you think about insoluble fiber, it's working like a broom in our digestion, right? Kind of sweeping everything out that doesn't belong there, kind of moving things along. And then that soluble fiber I compare to like a Swiffer, where it's kind of sticky and it's kind of moving things through. So one of the major things that fiber does is works as our detoxer. So when we're having a bowel movement, when we have an elimination, right, we're eliminating toxins. And the more fiber that we have in there, the more bulk that we have in there, the more we're eliminating, or the easier that we're eliminating. So that's kind of one of the biggest things. If you look at traditional cultures where folks are very strong and healthy, their fiber intake is way, way, way higher, right? They're 35, 40 grams of fiber a day versus like the average American, I think they're getting like 10 grams of fiber a day, right? And so, not to sound like a broken record, but most of that is our fruits and our vegetables, our whole grains, our legumes, our nuts and seeds, right? So again, like, it all kind of circles back to eating those plants. Animal products don't have any fiber, right? Flesh does not have any fiber. It's plants that have the fiber. For women, especially of childbearing age, what fiber does is help us regulate our hormones, right? So any excess estrogen gets eliminated through our bowel movement. So it's really important for that. It's also creating, you might have heard of the microbiome, right? So we're kind of like walking condominiums for all sorts of healthy bacteria, or maybe less than healthy bacteria. And so that fiber is actually kind of feeding, is a good way to think of it, feeding that healthy or good bacteria. So the more fiber that we're eating, or the more good quality fiber that we're eating, but also too, fiber makes us feel full. Right? So when we're eating a high fiber diet, we eat and we feel satisfied and we feel satiated, versus something that doesn't have fiber, like potato chips, right? Or I always use Cheez-Its as an example. We can eat a lot of those, like you were saying, we can eat a lot of calories, but not really have the nutrient density. And part of that can be not enough fiber to make us feel full and feel satisfied and feel satiated. So
right. And then the other thing is, with regards to fiber, I think a lot of people who don't have a lot of fiber in their diet, if you feel yourself feeling sluggish, you got a bellyache, you just think about, and I hear people say, I feel so much better when I had a good elimination, or, guys, a good bowel movement. And a lot of that has to do with the amount of fiber that you have in your diet. And I can't say enough about, just as you said, why we need to have it. So that's really, really important. But let's talk about
little thing I do want to say, just in case people get really excited about fiber, slowly increase that fiber.
Right. Because too much fiber and you don't have enough water.
Totally.
Oh my gosh.
You need to make sure you're drinking the water. You need to make sure you're moving your body, and you want to slowly increase that so that you give your body time to remember, like, oh, this is how I digest this, right? It's also chewing well. It's also eating in a relaxed state, right? So I think it's great, but I always want to encourage people, because sometimes people get really excited and then they're like, oh, whoa, right? Like that's feeling a little gassy or bloaty. So slowly.
Good point. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've been there, done that. So definitely you have to do that. But let's talk about the role of what I would refer to as mindfulness in healthy eating, as it relates to portions. So can we talk a little bit about that? What's mindfulness in healthy eating? You go to a physician, you need to be mindful in your eating habits. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. I think it can look different for different situations. I mean, there's kind of the bigger picture about being mindful about what we're eating, or intentional about what we're eating. So again, it's not opening the refrigerator and thinking, what are we having for dinner tonight, right? That intention or that mindfulness may start with the grocery list. It may start with shopping that perimeter, or making sure there are more fruits and vegetables. It may be trying a new recipe. So I think that mindfulness can start with those sort of bigger, more having a plan, having some things prepared, So that to me is part of mindfulness. Like there's an intentionality around, like, I'm prioritizing making healthy choices. I want to make those healthy choices as easy for myself as possible. And how can I do that? But then you get your plate. Okay. And so we've all done this, right? Where you've sat in, you have like a bowl of popcorn or a bowl of whatever, right? And you sat in front of that TV show and you're just like staring at the TV show and just doing this, right? We've all done it, right? And then all of a sudden the bowl's empty and we weren't really even aware of what we were eating, right? We weren't enjoying it. We weren't experiencing it. It was just like, right? That's not being very mindful. And it's okay that it happens every now and then. But what we want to do is, especially if it's a treat, especially if it's something that we really, really enjoy, we want to be mindful. What does that mean? Being aware, being present. What is the color? What does it smell like? What does it taste like? Generally, that means we also slow down. I'm a fast eater, so this is something you can tell I'm a fast talker. I'm a mover. So mindfulness is often slowing down, being present with the food. It could even be like setting a nice table, right? Putting on some nice music, turning off the TV, putting away the telephone, right? We have a lot of distractions. So I think part of that mindful eating for many of us these days is actually just, even if you just start with one meal a week, be present with that meal, right? Not doing anything else, right? Not checking email while you're eating, not checking the news, right? Just focus on the eating, right. Pleasure, the enjoyment, the color, the flavor, the texture. That I think is, and when we do that, when we bring that presence to it, honestly, we typically eat less, right?
That is true. That is so very, very true. I can attest to that. And you just talked about all the distractors that doesn't allow us to focus on, what we're doing. Because if you're watching the news and, oh my gosh, how many people are, they're so connected to the social media, they're connected to the television. So you make a good point. But we got a question from a viewer. The question is oatmeal a good source of fiber for diabetics?
Yeah, great question. So the oatmeal's tricky. So oatmeal gets set, like, eat your oatmeal, eat your oatmeal, eat your oatmeal. Again, I would ask you to check in with yourself on your oatmeal. I find a lot of people do well if they add some things to their oatmeal. So you might have heard of chia seeds. Some people do well adding some chia seeds to their oatmeal, or adding some slivered almonds to their oatmeal. The way to check, this is how it's kind of the best way to check for your body if you're not measuring your blood sugar. So if you are a diabetic, check your blood sugar. Have the oatmeal, measure your blood sugar, have the oatmeal, measure your blood sugar. But for those of you who are not measuring your blood sugar, because honestly, that is the best way for a person who is diabetic to know exactly what is this food doing for my body. But for the rest of us, check in and see how long after that oatmeal before you feel hungry again. So I have some clients that do great on oatmeal. They have their nice big thing of oatmeal. Maybe they put some nuts and seeds in there. Maybe they add a little cinnamon. Maybe they have some blueberries. They eat their oatmeal and they're good for like 3 or 4 or 5 hours. Great. That oatmeal is working great for them. It is a great source of fiber. Wonderful. For someone like me and my body and a couple other folks that I know, I eat that oatmeal and I am starving an hour later, right? Oatmeal doesn't work well for my body. It just messes with my blood sugar personally. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, where's the food? Where's the food? Where's the food? So I personally, if I'm going to do oatmeal, I have to like add a lot of other things to it to make it work for me. But that's where you as a person get to see, like, does this meal work for me? And I usually find for most people, if you have that meal and it's a full meal, that in terms of keeping your blood sugar stable, you should be able to go at least 3 hours before you feel hungry again, before you need to eat again. Sometimes maybe 4, sometimes maybe 5. But if you're hungry an hour later, something about that meal just didn't quite work. Maybe it needs more protein. Maybe you need more healthy fat. Maybe the oatmeal itself wasn't enough.
Yeah. You know what? And you just mentioned, that was a question I wanted to come back to. What are examples of healthy fats? When I hear fats, are we talking butter?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible because it's
all right.
Right. But, fats sort of got a bad name. I mentioned I'm 46. So when I was sort of coming of age and thinking about my health and nutrition, it was when everything was fat-free, right? Fat-free snack wells, fat-free this, fat-free that, right? It was fat-free, fat-free, fat-free. And fat was the demon. Fat was the evil. And I think back to what I was eating then when I thought I was eating very healthy. And I know that I was eating a lot of sugar, right? I didn't know it was a lot of sugar, right? Because it was fat-free. So, and again, kind of the bigger politics around it, right? There's some politics around sugar and fat sort of being blamed. That doesn't mean that all fat is good fat and have as much fat as you want, right? So typically for most people, we're talking from plant sources again. So your nuts and your seeds. That could also be from good quality olive oil, avocado oil. Some people do okay with coconut oil. Again, some butter, or folks might know about ghee, which is clarified butter. That in some small amounts can be a good idea. I do recommend with dairy, and this is again a bigger topic, trying to get organic if you can afford it, because whatever that animal was consuming, whether it was antibiotics, pesticides, GMO crops, whatever it was consuming is going to end up in the butter or the milk as well. So if you can afford it, trying to get organic with the butter or the ghee. But, keto has become very, very popular, where it's a super high fat diet that works for some people. It does not work for everybody.
Right.
And so I think having some fat with a meal, it keeps us satisfied. It keeps us satiated. It's like it's the yummy, right? It's the yummy meal. Avocado is another great source. I love avocado. Sprinkling a few nuts and seeds on your salad, using a good quality olive oil for your dressing. We do need some healthy fat especially with our vegetables, because those ones that are fat soluble, they need fat to absorb in our body. So our A, E, and K, for example, that are especially good for our bones. So, so within those kind of healthy fats, the ones to sort of be mindful of is the fried fats, right? So anytime we deep fry things, that fat has gone bad, that fat has gone rancid, and that can cause a lot of issues, a lot of problems in terms of our cardiovascular system. So generally avoiding fried foods. The trans fats we now know, right? We were told those were healthy back in the day, right? 20 plus years ago. So avoiding trans fats or hydrogenated oil, and then avoiding too much of those sort of ultra refined vegetable oils that can start to show up in a lot of processed foods. So those are usually the ones that I kind of put in the try to minimize those, and try to focus on the ones over here that are more either plant-based or something like butter or ghee in moderation.
Right. Butter.
I
know. From the South, fat gives the flavor, right?
Absolutely, and it does, right? So we don't want to, those diets for most people. Again, this is for most people, but those diets that are super, super, super low fat, we end up not feeling satisfied and satiated, and so then we might go for the sugar, right, or the salt, or something else to feel that satisfaction. So we do need that fat.
Yeah. Well, thank you for for that overview. Because those are things that we really do need to know. So for our seniors, and I would consider myself a senior. I'm not telling my age. But I do carry a red, white, and blue card. So, but as seniors, listen, they may not be getting the proper nutrition. When I opened the show, I talked about the fact that, our seniors seem to be gaining weight. They're getting a lot of calories, but they're not getting nutrition, right? So what advice do you have for our seniors? And that's, of course, keep it in mind, there are certain areas where, there are harsh winters, so they may not be able to get all of the vegetables that they need. But what advice would you give to a senior as it relates to nutrition versus caloric value?
Yeah. Well, one thing too with the vegetables is frozen works great. So if you live in a place that, I'm in California, I'm very, very blessed to have access to a lot of fruits and vegetables here. But if you're someplace, frozen is great. Oftentimes with those frozen fruits and vegetables, they're freezing it right away. So the actual nutrient sort of load of that vegetables or that fruit has been maintained, right? And as long as you don't overcook it when you reheat it. So I often recommend, especially, if you, a lot of folks are doing, big shopping trips for a couple of weeks, right? Because they don't want to be going to the grocery store as often, or you just don't have access to it because of location. Focus on those frozen veggies and frozen fruits, because those can actually be very, very wonderful additions as well. Even some canned fruits and vegetables, right? So like canned tomatoes, or using canned beans, or what else? Like we use like canned artichokes, right? So there are ways to also use some canned fruits and vegetables, or beans or legumes too. So for seniors, I think you're absolutely right. One of my biggest recommendations is soup, right? So you can batch a lot of soup. It's really fun to make. It's easy to make. There's a lot of great recipes. It's a great way to get a lot of vegetables in there, some good quality protein, because seniors need protein too. But you're not having to cook, right, 5 days a week. You can make a nice big batch of soup. You can also freeze those soups. So I'm a big fan of the soup. I know not everyone loves soup, but I love soup. And there's so much variety with soup. So you mentioned difficulty chewing and swallowing, right? So that's again where the soup. Cooked vegetables sometimes are easier to digest. So sometimes as we get older, it's a little harder to digest raw vegetables, even though that salad might seem really, really healthy. Your body has to work pretty hard to digest that salad. So I'm a big fan of the soups, because it's going to be easier to digest. You can make it in big batches. You can make it relatively inexpensively, right? I think back to that beautiful story of the stone soup, where everybody sort of contributes their part. But I think that's a great avenue for a lot of folks in general, but a great avenue, especially for the seniors.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I told you I'm from the South, so I grew up in the day. I don't know how many people still does canning, but that was one of the things that we would can vegetables. But that's right. I mean, nowadays, frozen vegetables, you can get everything from, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus tips, you name it. And that's the key thing. So, great, great overview there. So Michelle, you have an online program called Whole Life Nourishment for Change Makers. Tell us a little bit about that program.
Yeah, so this really, really came as part of my my commitment to progressive change, right? I think there's a lot of really positive things we need to do in this world. And there's a lot of things I really, really care about. And so, especially in the last couple of years, I was feeling a little overwhelmed of like where to put my time and my energy. And I realized, wait, my zone of genius is in health and nutrition and wellness. So how can I make a bigger impact? Well, I can support progressive folks. I can support change makers, visionaries, healers, teachers, right? I work with a lot of teachers. Folks doing, important good work, right? And so if you are strong and healthy, your cup is full, you're able to give from that overflow, then you can go out and do the amazing things that you're doing to make the big impact, and I get to support you. So so it's a group online program. It's a 4-month program. The new one's going to be starting in a little bit, so that folks can find out about that on my website. But it really, again, is that holistic perspective. We do talk about food and nutrition, sleep and rest, schedule, routine, ritual. So how do we actually make this happen? Moving our bodies, but also kind of the mind, body, spirit pieces of it, of connecting to ourselves, connecting to others, and what is our bigger mission and purpose? Because I do really feel like we're here for a reason. And so how do we make all those pieces, which are us, right? How do we fill those up so that we're feeling strong and vibrant and healthy? So,
Right. Absolutely. And I think what you're talking about now, on one hand, there have been a lot of positives that have come out of COVID-19, right? And one of those is that I'm finding that more people are talking a lot about self-care.
yes.
They are, it is just vitally important to them. And it's taken the time, kind of as I would say, to smell the roses, because they realize we've just been moving through life so fast that we've missed so many things. And whether it was about our health, taking care of our health, whether it was, really taking a long look in the mirror at, what needs to change, really making that bucket list. But all of these things come together, and it all still starts with nutrition. Like I said, if you are, alive, kicking, you're talking about eating, we're talking about nutrition, and that to me is just so critical. So I think your program is a really, really good program. And I've been all over your website and checking things out, and you just have a plethora of information. It's just so much, and that just speaks to the passion and desire that you have. So I'm going to ask you this, Michelle. What do you want people who've been watching this show, and thank all of you guys for hanging in there with us, what do you want people to take away from today's show?
Yeah, thank you. I think it comes back to the slowing down, listening to our bodies, having a plan, making sure that we have things ready to go so that it's a lot easier to make those healthy choices. Eating that rainbow, focusing on those plant foods, right? And again, sort of that 80-20. I think that's a good takeaway for most folks, that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, that we can enjoy our treats, be present with them, be mindful with them, but have those nutrient-dense, nourishing foods most of the time. And I think the rest will follow from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you guys, throughout the show, I have been highlighting how you can contact Michelle. And of course, the beauty of COVID is also you can coach by way of Zoom or
Yeah.
FaceTime or, Microsoft Teams, whatever it is. And you can be all over. And that's one of the things that I love is that our show is live streamed everywhere. So I want to thank Michelle for being on the show today, for giving us this information. It has just been enlightening, and I know now that I can have that candy bar without feeling so guilty about it. And so I'm really, really grateful for all the information that she has shared with us. Next week, I want you guys to be sure and tune in as I close out Black History Month, featuring Black male entrepreneurs. Now, if you were with me when we kicked off, the month of February in our very first show, I highlighted Black female entrepreneurs. So we're going to close out Black History Month talking about Black male entrepreneurs. Now, I want to remind all of you guys that today is Giving Tuesday. And so we can't do these things without you. So I will say this, that if you didn't take anything away from today's show, then it's really you who did not get the memo. Until this time next week, hey, I want you guys to be well, to social distance, to practice safe hand washing, wear your mask, guys, and remember that the quality of your life is determined by the decisions that you make. Be well. God bless.